I want to welcome you to this inspirational session on when arts meet science. So the aim with this session is to share knowledge on how to engage and interact with the public in science through art. But we also want to initiate collaborations and inspire you how you can do that with artists to enhance your science communication and public engagement activities. My name is Mairéad Hurley, and I'm working at vetenskap och allmänhet on a daily basis with public engagement questions and especially with European projects and collaborations. And art is a powerful tool to reach people. Since prehistoric times, humans have used art to tell stories, communicate complex ideas, and express emotions. Now, scientists and science communicators are increasingly using diverse art forms to convey science to the public. And today, you're going to be listening to Mairéad Hurley from the Science Gallery in Dublin and Luiza Bengtsson from the MDC in Berlin, who will showcase how they, in their organizations, have had artists and scientists collaborate and how they together build bridges to engage the public in science. First, you will be hearing the two inspirational talks by the presenters, and then we will have a Q&A session where you can ask the questions, all the questions that popped up when they had the presentations, and then we also will engage and interact with each other and share knowledge. But first of all, I would really like to know who's in the room. So if you bring out your cell phones and you go to mentor.com, which I think you already have, and it's 127772.
Nu är man ju i den andra. Nu kommer man tillbaka.
You just refresh, tryck.
Du får ta bort den sista.
State University in Leeds, but it's quite a lot of others as well. What kind of other organizations are we talking about here? Any? Art. Interesting. Any else?
Government authorities.
Government authority. Good. Good to have you here. Other? Maybe?
Science Park.
Sorry?
Johanneberg Science Park.
Science Park. Welcome. So you're both a bit business as well, maybe?
Yeah.
Good. Great. Perfect. And also, another question I would like you to answer is if you have any previous experience in organizing an arts and science project or activity or event, or if this is kind of the first, not the kind of maybe the first thing you hear about it, but if this is the first time you maybe think about it. It's an even game. Wow, good. Now we have lots of things to share and experience from each other. Wow. Wow, that's an even game. Great. Now. So, as promised, we will now hear Mairéad Hurley, who is Education and Learning Manager at Science Gallery in Dublin. But she has also a degree in physics and astronomy, and she spent a number of years teaching science, maths, engineering in schools in Ireland and Australia before joining the Science Gallery Dublin team in 2016. But she's also participating and been responsible for a lot of international collaboration projects, and also within the European Researchers' Night, Forskarfredag, as we heard at the previous session. Great, please. The floor is yours.
Very much.
Hi, everybody. Thanks so much. It's really an honor to be here. Thank you for inviting me, and I'm looking forward to telling you a little bit about what we do in Science Gallery Dublin, and then to join this conversation between this perfectly balanced group of art science experienced and inexperienced people. So really looking forward to seeing what comes out of that conversation. So I'm going to just tell you a little bit about Science Gallery, but kind of introducing some of the work that we have done in the past few years, and sort of our approach to art science collaborations, and as Mairéad mentioned, some of the European projects that we're working on as well. So Science Gallery Dublin was started in 2008, part of the university, Trinity College Dublin. So we are actually a part of the university, but we're on the edge of the university, we're close to the city, we're sort of in this lovely position between being a public, free entry space for members of the community, but also part of the university as well. And I think that's quite a unique model. Science Gallery Dublin was the first node in what has now become an international network of science galleries. So Science Gallery International is now a parent organisation which has been opening up science galleries across the globe. And Science Gallery was started with the idea of being the world leader really in being a sort of transformative and inspiring organisation for young people, for curious minds, through the arts and sciences combined. The mission, as we see it, is to ignite creativity and discovery where science and art collide. So we use this word collide quite a lot in talking about the thinking behind Science Gallery and what we do. We kind of use the metaphor of a particle accelerator for people. So collisions between people, collisions between ideas, bringing together diverse groups of people with different experiences, different expertise, and giving them a space to talk about new ideas, to generate new ways of thinking, and to look at the way new audiences might engage with these new ideas. So I have a short video, but I'm actually going to skip it, and maybe we'll come back to that at the end if I have some time, because I think I have too many slides and too much to talk about. So this idea of ideas colliding, a really nice quote here about this is something from the cellist Yo-Yo Ma, and he talks about the edge effect. So he describes it as his favorite analogy is the wrong word. Just something from science that he found really interesting was an example from ecology, where at the edge or at the border, the transition zone between two different ecosystems or ecologies, for example the forest or the savanna, it's at this intersection point where there's the greatest diversity of different life forms and the greatest number of new life forms being created. So he talks about this transition zone, and the reason for that is the richness coming from both different sides. So both different ecologies having impact on one another and generating new ways of thinking, new ideas that blend across these multiple disciplines. So how do we make these sort of collisions happen? I suppose one of the ways to look at this boundary or intersection zone that I've talked about here is to kind of look at the overlap in behaviour and thinking between the arts and the sciences. So while the arts and sciences have very traditionally been seen as two very separate cultures, two things which exist in their individual ivory towers, there's an awful lot of overlap between the ways of thinking and the patterns of behaviour and the things that go into creation of new things in both the arts and the sciences. So I think the very important ones here are obviously creativity, discovery, speculation, and debate as well. So we're interested in these boundary zones, these new kinds of ideas that can come about when you bring people together with expertise in both of these areas and give them an opportunity to explore or discuss new ideas. So how do we stay edgy? How do we stay at this edge point, this edge zone? So our program is ever changing. We're a very small space. We are, if I get a chance to show you the video, it's a very impressive looking large building. We actually only have 2 very small floors of it. But what we do in our space is that it's quite dynamic. Every year we have 3 exhibitions, and they're always thematic. So we pick a broad theme and we use that lens to explore different angles and bring in different ideas or different ways of thinking about that theme. Alongside our exhibitions, we have events. So we have an events program which complements. It also allows us to go off-site and outside of our building and to do events in other places, reach new audiences. And then to go deeper, we have educational programs, which allows for a much more engaged, a much deeper engagement for our young people in particular. And finally, research. So we're trying to do research into the impact of the kind of learning that happens outside of the classroom in an environment like Science Gallery, and also to look at the impact that this type of engagement has on people. I just thought of something and then I forgot it again. I say young people. I should say that our target audience is 15 to 25 years old, because we believe that that's the age that has the most transformative impact. So we really try to make sure that we connect with our young audience. So these are our 3 core values: connect, participate, and surprise. So we really want to connect with young people and have them involved in the process of creating and being part of the gallery program at all stages of the production. So when we produce an exhibition, we have an open call process which goes out through our open call network, and we pick one broad theme. That theme is picked in consultation with young people and also with experts. We have a group called the Leonardo Group, and it's kind of a brain trust, people from various disciplines and various social groups and activists and business people, as well as artists and scientists. And they all come together. That's where our broad themes come from. And then beyond that, we have an open call which brings the artworks into us, and then we have a curation process through which we select the artworks. And through all of those phases, we're involving young people as well. The things that help us decide what makes it into a Science Gallery exhibition are things like artistic merit and scientific merit, but also then we look at what makes something uniquely Science Gallery. Why is something a perfect fit for what we do? And that's really around this element of surprise. So what we're trying to do very much in our exhibitions and our events and everything that we do is to open up debate and discussion. So we're not trying to teach you about a particular element of science. We're not trying to convey sometimes we are trying to convey latest research findings, but sometimes we're actually just trying to have a conversation about this topic and to raise awareness that this is a topic that we need to be thinking about. So we're generally looking at the future. We do a lot of speculative design pieces, so pieces that might end up in our exhibition could be things that might not exist yet, but could exist if a certain technology makes its way into everyday life in our future. So a nice example of that is a piece, this was an exhibition that we had called Fake a couple of years ago, which is a beautiful broad theme for this era. We have so many things where fake is really interesting. It touches on artificial intelligence, it touches on politics, it touches on media, and then even in the more hard sciences as well. So this piece is called Phylogenetic Atelier by an artist called Tina Gorant. So this is really interesting what she's done here. It's a speculative or critical design piece. She's taken real research from a project called the Great Passenger Pigeon Comeback Project. And that's a real research project which is looking at de-extinction. It's trying to de-extinct the passenger pigeon, which went extinct in, I think, 1914. So they're using genomic sequencing and genomic editing processes to eventually look at, is it really possible in the not too distant future to de-extinct a species. So bringing that topic in as a talking point to the exhibition was perfect, because we're really interested in the questions it raises around the ethics of genomic editing and CRISPR use and all of the questions that come with that. But then the lovely thing about bringing in this artistic way of displaying it is, what she's done here is she's imagined a future where the passenger pigeon has been de-extincted, and then its leather can be used to create bespoke gloves. So the piece on the right is actually a rendering of what a glove would look like. And the idea is that this would be a luxury glove shop or a sort of speculative museum piece. And the question it's asking then is, if we get to the point where we're okay with de-extincting an animal, are we actually going to end up using this type of technology for our own benefit? Are we going to go down the route of, using these species for cosmetic goods? Are the animals that are now endangered going to be even more disposable because they might be de-extincted so easily? So it's bringing real science together with speculative design, asking questions about, are we okay with this kind of future? And that's really what a very science gallery aim is to do, is to have these conversations with the public. So this was another nice piece that we had. This exhibition was called Humans Need Not Apply, and it was very much focusing on artificial intelligence, the rise of artificial intelligence, and the questions that brings. This piece was called Word Camera by Ross Goodwin, and the piece is actually housed in an antique camera frame which was mounted on a wooden tripod, so visitors to the gallery could walk in and actually participate with this. They could walk up, stand in front of it, and the camera would take your image, and then it would dispense what was the equivalent of a Polaroid photograph, but it would actually be generating a poem. So it was actually an image-to-text machine, so the machine learning artificial intelligence algorithm built into the camera. It would take the image, decode what it sees in the background, and then based on the machine learning of many, many poems, generate you a beautiful piece of poetry like this, or an absolutely nonsense piece of poetry, depending on what you got. So some of these lines are beautiful. The stars were pale and dry, but then some of it is a little bit confusing, like struggling and stretching to strike a chair. So it was a great piece, because you could stand there, you could participate, you could get your friend to take your photograph, you have something to take away. But then it starts to raise questions around things like ownership of art and ownership of artificial intelligence. So you'll see here I have Word Camera by Ross Goodwin, but poem by Benjamin. So Benjamin was the name of the artificial intelligence which generated the poem. And you could say, who really wrote the poem? Is it Ross or is it Benjamin? And that's fine for something as beautiful as poetry, but when we get to situations like, if Benjamin had created a virus which was going to cause global nuclear war, who's the author then? Is it still Benjamin, or does Ross have any complicity in this? So again, just kind of raising conversation points and taking things from sort of an opportunity to be playful and to be participating in an exhibition, but leading to quite deep questions that you can go away with, and hopefully leading to a change in thinking about these kinds of topics. So I'll run through these quickly. So this was another exhibition piece. I talked about participate. Another thing that's important is that people can participate outside of our walls as well. So this was a piece in an exhibition called Field Test, which looked at the future of farming and food. And the visitor, this was located right outside our door during the exhibition, but later we brought it to Electric Picnic, which is a big music festival, and I think a couple of other big festivals in Ireland as well. So the visitor could go in, talk about with the mediator who was there with the piece, punch into a computer the things that are important to you in your food production, such as that it's sourced locally, that it's cheap, that it's delicious, various other attributes, and then based on an algorithm it would actually generate you a little snack, and then the snack would actually be prepared for you in the food lab and given to you. So really nice ways of participating for visitors from those examples. Events, I won't spend too long on this, but just to mention that for us events are, there's benefit in having an event which is a panel discussion with an artist talking more deeply about the intent that they had behind a piece, or talking about a researcher talking about the research behind what went into a piece. But there are so many other formats as well, and sometimes those can be more compelling but still get across an equally important message. So this was an event called Art Meet Flesh. It was hosted by Oran Katz, who's a pioneer artist and does a lot with in vitro meat and ideas around substitutions for meat. And this was hosted at a theatre in Dublin, so not in our own building, but in another theatre, and it was a team of an artist, a scientist, and a chef on each team. And it was a part game show, part discussion, part debate. The audience were tasting the foods that were created, and it was just a very compelling and engaging event. Now, a big production, so a lot more difficult to do than a panel discussion, but really it feels like a lot more reward as well from something like that. And food, again, being a very common theme here, because we actually have a very beautiful cafe, which helps. But you know, people open up to discussion over the table, over food. And so we've used that quite often as our event format to kind of talk about other issues. This was one where we had a Christmas dinner, but the food was created by an artist and a chef and a scientist together to look at issues around climate change. So, so education, and this is what the area that I mainly work in. So for us, education is all about engaging 15 to 25-year-olds very deeply. The approaches we use are, as well as engaging with our exhibitions and our events, workshops in tinkering or making, which has been something that we've been doing for quite a long time, design thinking and problem-based or project-based learning in an art science context have been really interesting as well. So we do that through 4-day or 5-day courses that we offer specifically for 15 to 16-year-olds. So they come and spend 4 or 5 days in the gallery, 10 to 4. We take 20 to 25 students at a time, and they all have to be from a different school. So we're really creating this environment where they have to come out of their shells a little bit. And we theme it around an upcoming exhibition as well. So we involve them in thinking about future exhibitions, and then we sort of set them a challenge around that topic. We bring in experts to meet them, and we teach them some skills which will stimulate these 4 key competencies that we see, which are creativity, critical thinking, collaboration, and communication. So at the end of their week, they have to communicate back their ideas, they have to do some peer review, they have to it really opens them up, and it's been a really rewarding project for us to have, and we've seen a lot of students become very engaged with the gallery. Some have gone on to work with us later, some have become part of our youth advisory committee as well. So I suppose this transdisciplinary approach to education we feel is very important for inclusivity. We try to make it open to everyone. We do reach out specifically to reach schools and young people who might not traditionally engage with science galleries, so we do have to make a little bit more of an effort to get those students in, but we have a positive bias. We reserve a certain number of places for people from certain schools in certain areas in the country. And then I suppose the big thing is really that we are trying to get these young people to recognise that they have a voice. They have a voice in these challenges that the world is facing. And I suppose being in an environment where everything is designed for young people and with young people, that they see their voice being recognised or heard. They see that there are places where challenges are discussed with them and not at them. So this is kind of the oversight of how we approach planning our education programs. So one of the big projects that we're part of in relation to education is this project called System 2020, and it's a Horizon 2020 project. It's mapping STEAM learning or science learning outside the classroom. So there's a few different branches to it because it's quite a big project. It's a research and innovation action. One of the things is that we want to create a map or a network. So we know that there are a lot of places that do science learning outside the classroom. We saw lots of people there from science centres and museums earlier on. I'm sure most people that work in universities or research are trying to educate somehow, and that kind of is in the same way it's outside of the classroom. Science communication is science education, really. So we're trying to create this network where organisations can put themselves on this map and then see who else is doing the same kind of thing. So this is the dream. It doesn't exist yet, but this will be hopefully what our map will look like at the end of 2021. So the project has another 2 years to run from the end of this month. And we have a partner in Sweden, the Tom Tits experiment, so I'm sure in the next few months they might be reaching out to some of you and asking you to put yourselves on this map, but if anyone wants to do it before then, system2020.education. It's a survey. It's quite in-depth, I won't lie. It's not 2 minutes, it's probably 20 minutes. But it asks you about your organisation, the kind of things you do, and then when you want to use this map to see who else is doing these kind of things around Europe, you'll find that same level of depth of information in there. We're also developing self-evaluation tools for young people to reflect on their learning in a setting outside of the school. So again, to look at those competencies like creativity and the things that are not measured in an exam or in a CV maybe, but just to be able to recognise your own learning in that kind of space. So that's something we're working on in the project. We're also looking at how we design educational activities. A lot of times we're designing them from a position of this work for me, I work in a science centre, it must work for everybody. And we have to question that. So an important thing is to design for equity and inclusion, and that's one of the goals. We recently met up in Helsinki to work on that. It was really interesting, and I'm really excited to see what comes out of that. And then I suppose as well, just to look at the art science approach and examine the impact of that on learning. So does bringing the arts into what you do with science, does it create a more, what kind of impact does that have? And can we measure it? Is there a way to do that? So yeah, I'd encourage you all to check out the project, get in touch with us if you're interested, put yourself on the map, and yeah, that's that one. So I presume I've probably gone too long now? Fine, yeah. Okay, so I won't show you the video, but I'm sure you can find it if you want.
You can send out the link.
Pardon?
You can send the link.
Yeah,
Put the link on the website.
Sure. So just to say that if anyone's in Stockholm, one of our previous exhibitions, Soundcheck, which is about music and sort of DIY culture in music, is on tour, and it's in... Yes, that's what I said. Until the end of August. So do drop by and visit, and if you're in Dublin, come by and see us. We're free, we're open 6 days a week. So thank you.
We'll save the questions for later. I have loads. I hope you have too, because I feel like I want to go to Dublin right away. Just hop on the plane and go. But then I would miss the rest of the event. So our next speaker is Luiza Bengtsson, and she's from the Delbrück Center Molecular Medicine in the Helmholtz Association, or MDC, in Berlin. And Luiza has studied chemistry and Eastern and Central European Studies at Lund University, so Luiza is actually Swedish, but based in Berlin since a couple of years ago. Forever. But she has, after having done her studies and also working in Germany and the US, now she's turned her hobby, science communication, into a full-time job. And she's also head of the training, open science training team in the Orion Open Science Project. So, please, Luiza.
Thank you, Mairéad. I'm very happy to be here. It's my very first Swedish conference. It's good to be home, but okay, I'll be continuing to speak English. Okay. So Orion Open Science, that's the project that actually Maria and I work on together, and I'm going to be talking about the project that we did in the framework of Orion, which is the Young Trajectories of Rejuvenation and CRISPR-Cas, and it was the result of an artist residency at the MDC in Berlin. And maybe before I go into details about that, so we are so there are two protagonists basically in this project. Actually, three. So state galleries missing, where the project's actually being seen, and you can visit it there. But basically, Delbrück Center, where I work, MDC, is a research institution in Germany. We do basic research in life sciences and molecular medicine. So it's very fundamental research. For example, single cell biology, systems biology, like really detailed, really complex research, which is really difficult to translate to the public. It always has something to do with some disease in the end, but it's always something that's really down the road. So usually our scientist looks at a very like fundamental level of disease, like which molecules and interact where, and usually they study one molecule for a long time, or like many throughput, high throughput methodologies, and it's kind of difficult to translate for the public. In the framework of Orion, we are experimenting with different ways of co-creation. So finding different ways of how to involve stakeholders. The public we always talk about, of course there are many different publics, but generally people outside of the research itself into research. And one of such experiments became the artist residency, because we're also gearing up to do a public dialogue Europe-wide on genome editing. So artist residency. It became, basically we realized we would like to do something with arts, and we have been doing little art projects at the research institution before. So we have, for example, since, 15 years, we have a scientific image contest. We have school classes working with us and producing some art pieces. We have all kinds of like little things, but we've never done something like this before. So we are a research institution, we're not a gallery, we are not specialists in art, right? But now we had a bit of money. That's actually one of the factors that's kind of important to factor in, money for this. And we had some really cool partners, so State Gallery, State Studio, sorry. It's a newly opened space in Berlin, which is dedicated fully to art and science. And it's funded by the German government through different organizations, but basically it's just started and was actually looking for a project. And how it is, I know the people who started the gallery, and so we started talking like, okay, we have the Orion project, maybe we can do something together, and this is the result. So we started an open call. So we received 40 submissions from 12 different countries. Actually, someone from Dublin Science Gallery as well. It wasn't as good as well. Winner Emilia Tika, a Finnish artist who's based in Berlin, it's Emilia. And she convinced with her concept. So we wanted something on genome editing. We wanted to discuss the implications of genome editing for society. But we didn't want to have something about like dystopias or utopias. We wanted something where the artist actually is willing to come to our labs and spend some time there and really take in what the genome editing science is about, and then do something based on that, and not have like a preconception or already has sort of like set ideas what they want to do. So we were looking for a concept that was quite open to influences from us basically. That's why we wanted to invite the artist into our labs. So Emilia won. She was definitely the best. And she was hugely successful. She spent 3 months in our research labs. There were several groups that participated. I will talk about it a bit more in a moment. And she was right away invited to present the residency at the Ars Electronica. Her art piece was exhibited from October on the State Studio in Berlin. It's actually still there for like 2 more weeks. It's so popular that it's like they don't want to take it away. And we also had an event at Berlin Science Week, which is one of those really huge events, outreach events in Berlin, where several research institutions participate. It's funded by the Fallen Walls Foundation, and it's a huge thing. And basically, we had a little event where we had a symposium where the scientists who worked with Emilia presented their work, and then Emilia presented her work, and there was a panel discussion, and that was also really good. And then actually all the movies from Berlin Science Week, all the talks are on YouTube, so if you want to watch that. I'm sorry, can you still hear me?
Yes.
I'm about to lose my voice completely. That would be really nice, actually. I'm sorry. Okay, I try to continue. So, what was the concept? So, Emilia, Emilia wanted to look at genome editing from 3 different perspectives. So she wanted to create a speculative design scenario. So again, it's quite speculative design is convinced us because it was supposed to be based on real scientific work. So she wanted to come to us to get look at this part. So and oh yeah, what I maybe should have mentioned, she was looking at aging as her, or rejuvenation as like the overarching topic. Can you rejuvenate yourself with CRISPR-Cas? Opening question. So she would want to look at this from 3 different perspectives, so scientific. CRISPR is the molecule, basically, or the system behind genome editing. I don't know, is genome editing something that everybody knows what it is? If no, please say no. No. Ah, there I see some. Okay, so basically it's like a new tool for genetics. You can cut and paste parts of our genetic code basically at will. So this is the system that's been developed and still being developed like really rapidly in the recent years. So we always had means to manipulate genomes, but the new thing with the CRISPR is we can do it in every organism, including humans. So all the old tools that don't really work that well in humans, for example, or even rats or other organisms, but CRISPR works in every organism and it's quite precise. And it's really the new applications for CRISPR and the system itself being improved as we speak in several labs across the world. Okay, so she was speculating whether we can stop the aging or reverse aging at the cell level with CRISPR, and then she had this speculative design approach. How would a future society look like if we could do that? And then she wanted to also think about this question: why do we actually want to be younger? Why do we want to live forever? And, so that's what she wants to incorporate in her art piece. And the trigger was actually mainly this man. I don't know if you all know him, Albert Gray. So this is it's amazing because it's really this psychobabble, or like sometimes people are just in babble. I just realized, I'm like, of course you've heard about Albert Gray. No, okay. He's very controversial. It's one of those Silicon Valley guys who has a lot of money, and already 20 years ago he founded the Sense Foundation. It's a private nonprofit, and he's funding basically research that stops aging, but he does it totally outside of academic systems. So he has also founded or he's involved in funding several companies that actually develop products to stop aging. He has a very interesting theory, which is actually scientifically okay, I mean, it's sound. He is a very controversial person because he says, oh, the first human who's going to live forever is already born. So we are at the brink of breakthrough from this, with these technologies. We can live forever. Actually, in real, he looks much older. I actually met him last week, so I'll tell you later as well. So this guy is quite controversial. He has some interesting ideas, and the thing is, also what's interesting about him, as I just mentioned, he's totally outside of the academic system, and it works somehow. Okay, he could be like maybe citizen scientist. So she was triggered by Albert Gray and his companies. Okay, then what happened? So she came to the NBC, and actually the first thing that happened was it's from New York Times, but basically a total clash of cultures, and then, well, not the truth, but like at least a mutual language that got developed. So Emilia came with a concept, which was, well, we're just gonna treat the cells, like the humans can treat themselves with some kind of CRISPR therapy, and then they're gonna become younger, and I'm gonna produce a kit that, so that people can interact with, that will be then like either sold online or it can be like interacted with at the gallery, and there you can inject yourself with some CRISPR, and there will be some cells there that you can also ingest somehow. It was like she had like for the practical stuff, she had the really ideas which were totally out there. And all the scientists, we had like a first meeting with scientists at the NBC and Emilia. And it started with people shouting at each other. Well, actually, scientists shouting at each other, not Emilia. because he says that's impossible. What are you saying? This is not scientifically sound. And how can you come here with this like really stupid concept? Like you don't understand anything about biology, and that's not how we work. And you cannot even take out human cells from the lab. It's never going to work. And it was kind of scary in the beginning. So all the people behind the Orion Artist Residency project were a bit like, oh, it's not going to work. But then people started slowly talking with each other. Actually, we served them some beer and some pizza, so that helped. and actually realized, okay, so she came with her like artist view. She came like, this one going to do. And the scientists were always like, this is not scientifically sound, so it's not possible. But when they started talking with each other, basically, she was like, oh, maybe I can refine my idea. Maybe it's not very, well, maybe it's really not going to work. Maybe it's too out there. It's not, because she wanted to base her artwork on actual science. So maybe it's not going to work like I think it's going to work. And the scientist understood it's not about doing science as an artist, it's about creating an art piece that has some scientific basis, basically. Then they started talking to each other, and some kind of like mutual language at least was established. And actually, after 3 months...
the language of beer drinking?
In the beginning. That always helps in Germany, definitely. Basically, it took 3 months for her, but actually already after like couple of weeks in the lab, she became kind of like a little celebrity on campus. So because of course we did some advertisement of like we have this artist residency, and you could recognize her. Like we have quite nice campus, which is quite green and the park places. So when she was like walking to the cafeteria, people were like, oh, is this the artist? Oh, this is the artist. So it was like, okay, something's happened here. And that was actually very interesting because it transformed the campus as well. There's like someone totally different place, but it's not pupils, it's not politicians, like people that come by regularly, but like someone who's totally different from our usual visitors, basically. Is there and is doing something which is actually quite cool. So this interaction started to. So this is actually the actual paper that she was basing her first proof of concept experiment. Sorry, it is actually true. You can this paper was done with a different technology, but she actually did the scientific experiments in our labs to show that you can use the Cas9, which is really a newly developed version of this genome editing system, one component of it, to actually activate the Yamanaka factors in human cells. Of course, in Petri dish, in a laboratory condition, and it was all optimized conditions, but it actually does work. And this paper here showed that from 2016, she was talking about that this was done actually in mice, that you can actually really rejuvenate mice. And rejuvenation meaning that the cells show hallmarks of reversed aging. So they can reverse aging the cells. They are more stiff. The cells have a certain epigenetic markers, so certain marks on DNA are taken away. And all of this, like how we classify aging on the biological level, on molecular biology level, you can actually reverse that by expressing Yamanaka factors. And Yamanaka factors actually the 3 factors we can use to reprogram cells to become embryonic, to become stem cells. Okay? So basically, in our development, we just fertilized egg. The Yamanaka factors make sure that we start development. Basically, so as long as Yamanaka factors are expressed, we are in stem cell stage, so to say. If they're gone during the life, they will become adults and age. So basically, just wanted to show she really did this scientific experiment and showed that it works. And this is up close how her artwork looks like. So this is this inhalator. When you inhale the Cas9, so this special kind of genome editing tool system, and then you start re-expressing those Yamanaka factors in your cells, and then you become a bit younger, but of course you have to do it all the time because you only get a little bit rejuvenated. So if you want to inhale, you have to keep inhaling. So this is the inhaler, and then she produced some kind of like a photo story where there's a couple and he's inhaling and she's not, and of course she's aging and he's not. And it's actually quite amazing, like visually even, this artwork really, it's really good. It really touches you, and it's not a new topic. I mean, they had loads of art done that, but just being so tangible with having this inhalator there. There's also another piece of the artwork. It's a microscope with the cells that she actually reprogrammed. It's tangible. It's kind of almost possible, right? It could happen. I don't know if you can see it here. She's eating spaghetti bolognese, I think, and drinking some wine. Here's water and some pills. And also, like, she's also speculating the impact of this technological kind of rejuvenation. What's going to happen? How would your life look like? And what's natural, what's not. Death rituals. So that's hers. That's his. Previous wives. Both actors actually volunteered for the project. So she is actually the oldest still active photo model. She's from Poland. She's 88, I think. And he's he's a very famous German actor. They volunteered for the project for free. So they really like the concept. So coming back to Hurley. So I actually met him last week because he has this I'm doing aging conference in Berlin, the second time this year, and someone from our institute, a PhD student, invited him to give a talk at the MPC, and I was like, oh, good, when he's here, I have to talk to him, right? It's kind of like, yeah, oh, okay, I have to do it, okay. I just want to tell you that, I mean, nothing surprising came out from talking to him, and except for one thing. I told him about Emilia's project, and about the inhalator, and he's very skilled communicator and marketing PR person, and he's like, he just repeated in his talk and talking to me, repeat what he always repeats, so you can see his YouTube videos. Didn't say anything new, but then you could really see, like, it was the first time he turned, like, sort of like his attention, and I was like, he's probably doing that. He was like, yeah, I know the paper, yeah, I know this kind of stuff. Oh, inhalator. So it's interesting. So, because this is kind of the stuff that these companies are doing. It's very speculative. I mean, for our researchers in the daily sort of grinds of scientific systems, this is very speculative. But for people like him, this is maybe something they can be doing already. So, what else happened? Okay, so this is just the people involved. Orion Open Science Project. We have a podcast. That's it. Oh, yeah. Sorry.
Thank you. Now, wonder, just time is running very quickly when you have so much interesting things to look at and to listen to. I just wonder, do you have any questions to these two interesting presentations? Anyone? Yes?
I thought the last thing when you were talking about the sort of dialogue between artists and the scientists, did the scientists got any sort of ideas from the creativity of the artists, sort of?
Yeah, that was actually one of those things we were discussing. So the idea behind getting this, oops, one second. The idea of, like, what we also wanted to have the artists there to have, like, force our scientists to be more biologic in their interaction with society, or just think about it more. And we were thinking, maybe there will be some inspiration, something fruitful, if you think from a different perspective, what could happen. And I must say, that didn't really happen. What happened was that people did start thinking about that it's actually good to have the outsider in the lab to challenge your thinking, but more in the scientific way, but not necessarily to, like, come up with new questions and new solutions, but more like, why am I doing this actually? What is the purpose of my project? Is this for any, like, greater good, or am I just so focused on this one molecule that I forgot the big picture? So this was definitely what happened, but that new scientific ideas came out of this. What Emilia said, what I found really interesting, she said afterwards for her that was eye-opening experience, because
when you read about science in the newspaper, when you come from outside of science world, you just read about all these fantastic results. And when you read about CRISPR, it's like, oh, it's clear. It's like, even the way I communicated was like, oh, it's a tool that we can do everything with. But when you actually work in the lab with this tool, you realize how tedious it is, and it's not as fantastic, and it's actually, well, actual skill to be able, to work with this stuff, and it's not just something that happens overnight. And so just understanding the scientific process, that was the biggest benefit for her. And of course, the fantastic artwork that she's now touring.
There obviously must have been, there was the benefit as well for the people in the lab that they got to spend that time with her, helping her develop her understanding from this idea that sounds crazy to something that they were happy to see going out into the world as their collaboration.
It's difficult because basically scientists are so stressed with science. We're not talking. There are some senior scientists involved as well, which was really interesting. But mainly it was postdocs and PhDs who were actually taking care of her. Like, so the senior PIs were like, yes, let's do it. Come to our lab. And very few of the senior PIs were actually taking care of her as and to supervise someone who has never done science before in the lab to actually do quite complicated experiments, it's not something you do on the side. It's something like it's really full-time job basically. So this is the time that you take away from your actual science, where you're basically making sure with your actual daily work that you have a job, down the line. So it's really difficult for the scientists to see this benefit, that they're spending time with someone else. They do it because they find it interesting, but not as a benefit. They don't see it. Maybe, I don't know. It's in short-term thinking. It's not a benefit for scientists to explain to invest time.
Do you have any other questions? Yes.
I have two questions, or many questions. From the beginning in the open call, how was the open call? Did you have a question, or was it an open suggestion to leave in from the artist?
So the topic was clear, genome editing,
Yeah.
and it was also written in the call that we don't want any dystopias and we don't want any utopias. We still got some, okay? But that was clear, and that we want to have a dialogue, something that sparks dialogue. But otherwise, it was open.
And that's also kind of forming an archive now for interesting ideas to
Yeah, some of the ideas were quite disturbing. So interesting but disturbing.
But would you consider redoing the project? I mean, another project?
I'd love to. I can say how much money we invested in it. It's still investing into it, so I don't think it's going to happen that soon.
In terms of that kind of residency, there's a project that we are involved with, partner project supported by Creative Europe, and it's called the European Artificial Intelligence Lab. So it's led by Ars Electronica, and that has just kicked off, and it's had one open call so far for a residency connecting artificial intelligence. The first residency was connected with neuroscience, but there's going to be 3 more in the next 3 years. So that will be, again, sending an artist, selecting through the open call and sending them first to the Science Research Center and then to the Ars Electronica Future Lab to create a piece. But yeah, it's a big investment in time, it's a big investment in money, and finding the labs that are willing to put their time in. Yes?
I have a question for Luiza. Have you measured the impact? How many people did you reach? Did you spark dialogue?
We definitely sparked dialogue on the campus, that's for sure, because people are still talking about it. And we actually now we're using, so we have this annual open day, which attracts around 10,000 people every year to our campus. And this year, since we split our campus now in 2, we're going to have 2 long nights of sciences. And so Amelia's piece will be exhibited in one of the locations, so we have a whole program around it. And basically, it became kind of known art piece. So it sparked dialogue in the sense that people are now asking us for this expertise and for can we do something around this art piece? Is it available for something? Can we do something with this? In the State studio where it's exhibited, it's definitely people are coming like super interested, and a lot of people are coming through. It's not the only artwork there, so of course I cannot say this is totally attributed to just this one artwork. there's also some skin project that's for the, looks like a pigeon.
That could be the same one.
Maybe, yeah. So a lot of people have seen it at the Berlin Science Week. The discussions were like people who want to leave. So it's definitely generating dialogue, but honestly, I don't know how to measure it and to do it properly. It's just too much one-off. I think we would start like a proper program of actually repeating something like this. I think then we could start thinking about better impact measures and indicators. For now, it's been trending on Twitter. The open call was trending on the artists' outlets apparently, because we have got a lot of submissions from West Coast to West. That was apparently very popular open call there. But from those different countries, everything from it was from Saudi Arabia to US, in New Zealand, I mean really from all over the place.
And Mairéad, how do you, coming back to Science Gallery, how do you measure impact? How do you know that you're doing something? Again, it's a really difficult thing to do. We have a PhD student just started quite recently who's going to be working on that. I think measuring the impact on the researchers and scientists, and it's really difficult. But yeah, I suppose it's like Imran was talking earlier about the public engagement and that being a big part of everyone's funding now, and also the impact that you have. And I suppose it takes researchers making an effort and deciding to say, we'll go in depth and we'll do something with an artist and we'll create something, and that might be a lot of time on one small project, and maybe that's a lot more meaningful than taking part in an outreach program every week or something. So I guess it's a different kind of engagement, but gathering stories I think is one of the things we've done, and we have some on our website, and Science Gallery International have done that, but there's a big piece of research to be done. So yeah, hopefully our student will have some results in about 2 years.
And now when you mention Science Gallery International, are there any science galleries in the Nordics or anyone setting up?
The nearest is that Science Gallery Rotterdam has just been announced, so it will be starting sometime in the next.
So if there's any people in the audience that think about, wow, this is a great idea, we should bring this to Sweden or to another country in the Nordics, how would they go around it?
Yeah, I think the best way would just be to reach out to Science Gallery International, and they have a whole process for how they take on universities, but the model is always the same, so it's a university and a gallery connected to the university. And it's a really nice way then to link in with the researchers and get them involved in the process.
Actually, the State Gallery of State Studios, there's a State Gallery, but State Studios, State Studio. It's actually linked to the pendant to vetenskap, allmänheten in Germany, so Wissenschaft im Dialog. So and they just started. So you guys could also initiate something like that.
Yeah, we could. You can do a pop-up as well.
Yeah,
there's a big investment in a permanent space, but you can do a small pop-up.
Maybe at the next science festival, if everyone's interested to pop up Science Gallery. Now, we had actually planned for doing some interact discussion among you here, but I was just thinking, if you could just reflect on the first question, would you consider organizing a science project on the section after hearing these inspirational talks? Would that be something? Just think about it. You can talk to your neighbor and discuss it. And what would be the drivers for your organization? Maybe you're already doing it, as we had 50-50.
As the next session is starting in 7 minutes, we'll continue after. We have different discussions. Raise your hands. How many would you consider of organizing a science activity organizing an art and science activity or yeah, maybe. And there was those one who didn't have actually done that. Would you consider it? The organizations that have not yet organized an art and science, would you consider organizing one? Yeah, great, perfect. Anyway, I would like to thank our speakers today. And I'm sure that you will have lots of maybe calls or emails from all the participants here. And let's give a big hand of applause.